haven't used this shit in forever. A week feels like a long time.
Hi, Crystal. Hi. Jeff, get her a mic. Dang it.
There's the chat. I'm like, how does this work?
Jeremy was supposed to send me a mic. No, I do have a mic. I just need to get a cable for it. I also need to get a cable for this one because it's like fucking so. You just look at it wrong.
Yeah, Jeff, you suck.
Thanks.
Hey, so when I was doing it last week, I pressed live and it put us on record, right?
Yep.
So do you just do that whole thing, and then when you decide, all right, let's start the episode, we just start it, and then you edit it from there and just cut off the forward half?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. I was super confused. I thought there was a live option and then a record option, not a live recording option, right? So I was, yeah,
It's the opposite. There's a record only option, and then there's a live plus recording option.
Oh, thanks, Jeff.
So helpful.
Yeah. Jeff, shut up. Shut your mouth. Just teach me how to make money and shut up about everything else.
I don't even know how to make money. I'm fucking poor, dude.
Dude, I've been losing in the stocks game. Losing for years.
Yeah.
However, my oil stock in Alaska, they've been waiting to drill for 4 freaking years. In the last week, it woke back up after the gray area, and it's finally positive again. It's only like a couple percent positive, but heck yeah, dude. I've got 122,000 shares in this company, looking for them to strike oil, but they haven't been allowed to dig. So,
well, you never know, man. You might be the next trillionaire.
Well, that's the thing. Here we are. It's winter time, so they had to wait till winter to start because they had to get over an ice bridge, right? To get over a big old lake with all their heavy equipment. So let's see. Let's see if they strike oil, and then who knows? That thing goes to $1. 122 million, baby.
It's fucked up, man. That
Sub-Zeros.
I was watching this video this guy was talking about. He's like, that's when you know that a society is in collapse, is when the men come home from working and then they try to figure out, like, they start playing with the markets, trying to figure out how to make more money, right? And then eventually it's only a matter of X amount of time before societies collapse. And it's like, damn, we're at that point, man. Because I do the same shit. I spent the whole weekend just trading fucking meme coins on the fucking darkest places of the internet.
Darkest, dirtiest crap holes on the internet.
Trying to outpace inflation just to survive. It's like, fuck, man.
Yep. Whitney, hell yeah, brother.
Fuck yeah, dude. Kid's about to be a U.S. citizen, bro.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
51st state over here. Brandon's going to be the 52nd.
Okay.
Yep.
I honestly don't know about that, but
I don't know.
We'll see. We shall see.
They're saying that we have to put like quite a few $1 million into your guys' like military to even allow them to function. So if we stop doing that, it collapses. So then at that point, you might as well be a state instead of a country.
All I know is that if that happens, I'm moving to Canada.
Oh yeah, I'm buying like 1,000 acres for a penny or something like that, right?
Moving to Canada.
There's like 10 people there.
It'd be the new gold rush. All that land that nobody lives in up there, it'd just be, bro.
Yeah, you wouldn't survive in our cold, though, Jeff.
I don't care.
You're from Florida, remember?
I don't care. If it's an Arctic hellscape. All right, I will buy land there. Okay, I will take out a loan for $100 and buy 10,000 acres. Okay.
A stiff 85-degree breeze hit us at UFO days, and Jeff freaked out.
Dude, it was cold, man.
Dude, it was -30 the other day. Kenter was saying it gets down to -55, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll still go to school and work."
Yeah,
no
last
I'm like,
couple years ago in Alberta, it got down to like -50 degrees Celsius out here, and they still were sending kids to school. It was absolutely shit, in my opinion. But cold. That's what
Hey,
it is.
Siri, what's negative 50 degrees Celsius in Fahrenheit?
I think it's like 45 ish.
Negative 58 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, I was wrong.
Holy moly.
No.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
It was
fucking
like-
cold.
It was
I
like
choose
42 here, and I was freezing my ass off, dude. Just from here to the car, I was like, "Fuck this, man! 42 is fucked up."
Woman
right.
says 51st state. Nope, keep your cold there. I don't want it.
All right, I got a few things that we can talk about today. I
We
came
can talk
across
about them aliens with the bones.
We could.
Yeah, that's cool.
I didn't do nearly enough research into it though to hold a conversation. I was just cruising during my break today at work.
Slice at it. I looked at it a little bit.
Yeah. I am, however, starting a new project, and I was doing some research for a topic for that new project and came across some really interesting reading material. So I read it, and the topic was pretty cool. For those of you that appreciate the UFO stuff, which should be everybody here if you're listening to this podcast. There was an interesting bit at the back end of what book was it? It was shoot. I should probably have figured that out. I don't know. It was like 2 or 3 books ago. What book was it?
The big secret is Jeremy doesn't even know how to read. He just acts like he has all these books.
No. Jeremy definitely knows how to read. I don't know how to read. I've been faking it this whole time.
It was Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. It was the follow-on book that came out like almost damn near 2 decades after the Hunt for Skinwalker book by Colm Kelleher and George Knapp. The book that I did most of my research off of for the Skinwalker series that we did back when we were with the Paranormal Network. They did a section at the back of the book in the prologue on the 6 phases of modern UFO history. And I thought that would be a really, really cool topic to talk about. So if you guys want to talk about that, talk about the 6 phases and talk about the years and what each phase brought to modern ufology, I think that would be a pretty cool thing to talk about.
Pretty cool.
And then I see Wowen's put in the chat. Jake, have you guys? I didn't get to listen to last week's episode. I was super sick, so. Did you get to talk about your sighting the other day?
I did not. No, we didn't cover it. So if you're not part of the Facebook chat or the Facebook group, rather, you wouldn't have seen it. But Whitney and I were carpooling home from our job in Red Wing, which is just about at the border of Red Wing, Minnesota is actually in Minnesota, but the Red Wing Regional Airport is actually in the Wisconsin side, and that's where we work. So we have an hour drive from Red Wing to Menominee, and while we were driving, I saw I thought it was a helicopter, right? It was just kind of sitting still, and I kept looking at it until we got right up underneath it. And I realized it was more plane shaped. I mean, there was 4 lights, kind of in a cross shape. So not a square, right? But a cross. And so I was filming this thing, but the thing that kind of bugged me out is that it was staying completely still. And we all know that aircraft, especially prop planes and stuff like that, with a really large headwind, can kind of float in position, right? It's not until they go up or down that they actually start to accelerate and move. But it was just tripping me out quite a bit. And so I started filming it, or Whitney started filming it at first. And then she told me to pull over because I'm driving. I'm like, what the heck is this thing? And she's like, just pull over. So we pulled over and parked on the side of the road, threw on the hazards. And I'm filming with my phone. And then I pull my phone away because it's getting the lights, right? But I pull my phone away so I can actually look at the dang thing. And it's across like a plane, but then the sides are connected on all points. And I was like, that's not a plane. I don't know what that is, but it's not a plane. and we were 8 miles, she said, north of Elmwood, right?
She said in the chat 12.
She said 12. Okay, so we're 12 miles north of Elmwood, and so pretty close. And it was yeah. So I mean, it was weird. It kind of tripped me out a little bit. I know quite a bit about aircraft. I mean, me and Whitney work on aircraft every single day at work. I've worked on plenty of different military aircraft. I don't know what the thing was. It was not an airplane, unless airplanes suddenly have bands that I guess attach their wings to their nose and to their tail on all sides, right? So it was kind of plane shaped in the fact that it was, you know, a cross, right? Because the generally speaking, it's not a square. The tail extends a little bit past the nose, and the wings are a little bit closer to the nose, right? Because that's where all the well, that's I guess aerodynamics or whatever. But yeah, it was really trippy. And so we ended up taking all the videos and we threw them on the group chat and stuff. And unfortunately, with the way phone technology is, I mean, the main focus of the video was on the lights, right? So you can't see the body of the plane at that point or whatever it was, right? The drone or something. But yeah, it was super trippy because it just wasn't moving at first. It wasn't moving for the 5 miles until we got to it. It was just staying still. I was like, what the heck is that? And she's like, well, maybe it's a helicopter. I was like, yeah, but if a helicopter's stationary like that, it's usually because they're searching for someone. I grew up in the hood. I know about ghetto birds. They would have a big old spotlight looking for something, and there was no spotlight. What are they doing? Right. And so as we got up there, it was pretty different. Right. And it wasn't going very fast. It wasn't going like plane speeds. It was probably going, I don't know, 60 miles an hour less, you know, going over the top of us, which is pretty slow for an aircraft. Usually it's in the 100-mile-an-hour plus, right? So yeah, it was very strange, but I don't know.
It sounds very much like the drones that were over Jersey and other parts of the country.
It does. And even still, I kind of, you know, I kind of hesitate to say it was that because I really don't know. Right. I mean, there's been a lot of videos that come out from Jersey and New York and all these other places, and they are a lot clearer than my video was. Yeah. So I really hesitate to say, oh, this is what this was. I don't know what this was, but it was not an aircraft or sorry, it was not an airplane. Right. It was not a helicopter.
Speaking of the Jersey drones, I'm wearing the new 9-line New Jersey drone t-shirt.
Nice. And I'm wearing the shirt for all of us. Look at this thing.
I'm wearing my Shadow Band shirt.
Oh,
got Kenzar in it. Look at this shirt.
Dude, those things are super rare. So they're probably like a 1 of 5 right there.
I'm pretty sure that's the only shirt ever made with that print.
No, I know a few people who bought.
No, I remember there was one other person I saw with the same shirt in the group.
You're talking
shirt as well.
Oh, you're talking about Kenzar's shirt?
Yeah,
I can.
Oh,
I got my Shadow Band shirt on today. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
No, Jake's shirt is awesome. I like Jake's shirt too.
I never introduced you.
No, you didn't.
Oh, Kid, I'm sorry. Everybody listening today, we have Kid in the house.
Yeah.
Pretty sure everybody knows who I am at this point.
Danny's gonna be stoked.
Danny will be.
Yeah.
He'll be excited.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, he will. No, it's good to have you back on.
I'm excited to be back on. It's been a while. Let's
see that head ink.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I won't be able to hear you.
Look at that head ink.
So for those of you that can't see it, it's the whale and the bowl of petunias from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
And the whale has a towel wrapped around his waist because don't forget your towel, obviously.
Sorry to everyone that has to hear a fan buzz from this 3D printer right here behind me. I've been printing off a monstrous amount of stuff. Here's a I don't know if it'll focus because
it's glowing.
It's white, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's glowing.
Oh, there you go.
A Kelly Green Man. So this is for Jeremy. I'm going to paint it up for him from his episode. And
it's actually just like the story. They glue in the story.
And this is a rock cock. So there's a tremendous amount of people that put the Rock's face. There we go. See if I can block that light. The Rock's face on various objects. So this is a rock cock. And the next thing that's printing is Rocket Raccoon from Guardians of the Galaxy, except it has the Rock's face on it.
Oh goodness. I stand by this. This is the same guy that was in the chat going off about how people are so weird and they have this weird obsession with The Rock and putting his face on things, and yet here he is printing everything with The Rock's face on it.
The next thing is called the Rocket, so it's like a model rocket, but it has the Rock's head on the top. So we're gonna shoot it in the stratosphere. I can't wait.
Goodness gracious.
Oh gosh. That's obnoxious.
It's hilarious. Shut up. It's great. You'd love it, Kenzar. Don't even lie to me.
I never said I wouldn't. I think it's
love
funny.
my sick obsession.
All right. So new format for Infinite Rabbit Hole. We're not doing a scripted thing anymore. That will be part of my new project. We're going to keep things more streamlined, more conversationally based here for now on. So we're going to try this new format out with still dropping knowledge. You guys ready? You guys ready? To test the waters?
Send it.
All right.
Bet.
So like I said, what we'll talk about today are the 6 phases of modern UFO history, as outlined by Colin Kelleher, James Lacatski, and George Knapp in the back of their book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. Now, in phase 1, this was the initial phase. This was the introductory phase of the UFO phenomenon to America. This was brought forth in 1947 when Kenneth Arnold reported these boomerang or chevron-shaped aircraft flying in formation over Mount Rainier in Washington State. This is where you get the term flying saucer from, which was a misquote by the AP Press Wire. Who misquoted Arnold by saying that he had described them as flying saucer shaped. What he actually described them as when in relation to flying saucers were moving as if they were saucers skipped across the top of water. He actually explained them as a chevron shape or a boomerang type shape. And that misinterpretation of Arnold's description of flying saucers has stuck to the UFO mythos since. And the term flying saucers, or the descriptive term flying saucers, has become the number one described term in ufology since. So, phase 1.
So the saucer is the psyop.
Yes.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's what I put out, I don't know, 2 years ago in one of the episodes. I was talking about how he reported something different than the newspaper said flying saucer. And then we had 30 reports in 2 days of people saying flying saucers because they won their 15 minutes of fame. And then how Hollywood puts out an alien movie like they do the gray aliens. And everyone's like, oh, I've seen a gray alien too. And I've seen a gray alien. And then the green aliens. Oh, I've seen a green alien, right? So not discrediting historical like cave paintings and things from like, well, I know that that Skeeter brought us up in the chat as far as like Catholic paintings and things like that, and what are these objects and stuff like that. I can't account for the Catholics and their paintings, but you know, we do have historical paintings and architecture and designs that go back many years, and they have these sorts of things, which I understand. But I mean, for the most part, it seems that when Hollywood goes somewhere or misinformation goes somewhere, then the people follow because they all want to be famous and popular, even for 10 seconds on a newspaper article that everyone forgets the next day.
Now, to be fair, right? Like you said, not to discredit cave paintings and
Sure.
and such, right? There were plenty of historical sightings prior to the Kenneth Arnold fiasco, with the misquoted flying saucers, where there were flying saucer described craft that, but they never
Right.
used the terms flying saucer. I'm actually trying to look it up right now.
Yeah, I feel like this is, I mean, it's obvious to me that they would use, they give you a lot of truth, but then they mix it with a lot of bullshit, right? And then that way the public runs with a bunch of the bullshit, and it makes it easier for these intelligence agencies to sift through the bullshit to find the actual stuff, right? So like they probably have on their checklist somewhere, right? When I say they, let's just say like the Men in Black, right? Like whatever agency this is.
Sure.
You know, on their checklist somewhere, it's like, oh, if they mention a saucer, like instantly just throw it in the bin, right? Like we're not really gonna worry about that because we know
almost like
that
embellishment. You got to make it more interesting for people that way,
Right.
And then we think it's a saucer, so we're looking for a saucer when it's really this other shaped thing.
Exactly, it's a Tic Tac shape, or it's a you know, and
Tier
then
3B. Yeah.
A boomerang.
They know that. Right.
yeah.
They know that in the hangar, they've got the triangle craft, right? But then they also know that there's some weird other thing that's happening too, right? So it's on the checklist, right? So it's like once they go down the checklist, they're like, okay, here's the pile of shit that's actually worth looking at. And then we have a whole big pile of bullshit. But the bullshit gets out in the public.
So prior to the flying saucer, the two most popular descriptions for UFOs were described as the double convex type, which, if you think about it, would be a flying saucer, and the convex planar type, which would be a flat bottom with a flying saucer top. Those were the two that were most commonly reported throughout history, also within World War II, in the form of Foo Fighters and Ghost Rockets, which would have been just a few years prior to the Kenneth Arnold reporting.
Besides that, what makes me wonder with the ancient cave paintings and art from our ancestors, essentially, you know, we have such an imagination. I mean, we have Hollywood and all this sort of stuff, right? Where we make movies about all kinds of stuff that just don't exist yet, you know, or at all, right? Who knows? Like Tomorrow War, right? You know, we were watching Tomorrow War the other night, and it was just like, you know, teleporting through time 30 years in the future if you're already dead at that point so that you can kill the aliens and all this sort of stuff. Well, back in the Renaissance, they had Shakespeare, right? They had plays of things that didn't necessarily exist, right? So people have always had imaginations and told stories and have come up with things. It's just, you know, what are the things at their disposal? What if, you know, before the age of aircraft, it was the ability to fly like birds or like, quote unquote, the gods, right? Like I heard Louis C.K., he did a stand-up bit where he was talking about people bitching and complaining about the Wi-Fi not working while they're sitting in a seat that's flying 500 miles an hour. Like you're a ancient god right now. Like stop complaining, right? Maybe that was the thing. Could it be that these people just had these cave paintings and things because it was part of their storytelling of like how the world came to be, or you know, wouldn't it be cool if we could fly in the air like birds? You know, we couldn't do it ourselves. We can't grow feathers, so let's, you know, we'll fly in a boat across the sky or something like that, right? So it makes me wonder that more so than, you know, that they saw something. But at the same point, or at the same time, my intellectual brain, as far as going through my lens of Christianity, tells me that maybe spiritual influences were upon these people that gave them information to where either they saw the spirits themselves or the future and painted that. Maybe. Who knows? Right? It's really it's a toss up. Who knows? It could be nothing. It could be everything. No one really knows. But it is interesting to think about, because you can't really discredit that stuff, because we have archaeologists now that can, look as deep as the dye that was utilized to paint these cave paintings and say, okay, this is around during this time BCE or whatever it was, right? They're not going to say, well, this was made yesterday with acrylic paint, type stuff, or 20 years ago with acrylic paint, and then they just wiped a bunch of dust off and made it look really old or whatever it was, right? So they are there, right? They do exist, and they were there for a reason, whether that reason was for storytelling, for entertainment, or for a historical document of their life and their experience. I mean, who's to say, really, without proof? I mean, we're just kind of tossing it up there, but yeah.
Kid, you got anything? You're muted.
I was muted. You were correct. No, I don't really have anything. Just kind of absorbing it all right now. I kind of agree with what Jake is saying with, like, maybe they were just storytelling. Who really knows? But yeah, I don't really have much.
What about you?
Not yet.
Seems like a big psyop to me, bro. I'll be interested. Like I said before, man, like show up not in some fucking weird, spooky, mysterious way, place, out of sight, also show up in something that's not, it doesn't have fucking lights on it, right? Because you don't need lights. This aerodynamic shit, you don't need that. If you're traveling intergalactically and interstellarly, you don't need aerodynamics. You don't need that shit, right? So, show up in a weird, like, amorphic blob of some sort that's like organic in some way, then I'll be interested. And show up, like I said, downtown Orlando, I'm gonna be like, oh snap, right? Like, what the fuck?
But you wouldn't believe it anyway. It'd be like all these cops showing up at that Miami mall, and you'd just be like, it's fake. It's for a TV show.
This is why I said downtown Orlando, because that's the closest major metropolitan area to me, right? And it's and wait, hold on. It's the closest major metropolitan area to the Cape, NASA, where they launch all the shit into space. So if anything is going to come here and be like, what the fuck is going on here? They're going to be like, wait, they're launching stuff into space? This is one of the places they'd come check out. And when they fly down here, they're going to see the greater Orlando area, and they're going to show up over there, and that's going to be ground zero of when the fucking alien, or one of the other many, launch sites in the closest metropolitan area to those launch sites. And there's a lot of them, but this will be one.
I mean, there's Vandenberg Air Force Base up down in Southern California, but up in the mountains a little bit, and it's super remote. I mean, there's no one there.
But if you come in from high altitude, from space, right? And let's say it's a clear, I mean, and again, we're talking interstellar species here, right? They're going to have all types of sensors. They're going to come in, they're going to see what's the closest city to
that? LA.
They're going to fly into LA. They're not going to.
LA's gone.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Unfortunately, LA's gone, right?
Well,
LA's
you get
burned
my
to
point.
nothing.
My point is like, if a species, in my opinion, at least, is going to come here from another star system of some kind, they're not just going to meet some random dude in a farm, right? Like, that's weird stuff that we're doing. Okay. If another species is going to come here, they're going to come check out what's going on. Like, where's the stuff? Where's the energy? What are the lights that we see down there? What is all this stuff that's happening? Like, they're not just going to show up in a weird spot. They're going to be,
But let me ask you the question, right? If you were going to a foreign planet, would you go to the more populated areas? Would you would that be the more safe way to go, or would you go to the outskirts and check out one or two of these creatures before you go and you check out the spot where there's tens of thousands of them?
For me, it would depend on the area. Like, have I observed the area, right? Because like we were talking about last episode, Jeremy, you weren't here because you were sick, but I was talking to Jeff and Creamer. I was like, you come to my area, I'm going to shoot an RPG at your freaking your spaceship to see what the thing's made of, right? Or there's people like that, or they're just going to light that thing up. versus a major city where they don't have access, or the laws are against their ability to own firearms of a certain caliber, right? So it would certainly depend on how long you've been observing them. If you were observing them for a short period of time, then sure, some hillbillies somewhere versus a major city, right, where they have, you know, cops with bear cats and stuff, right?
You got to think, dude, all of our radio waves have been being shot out into space for 100+ years now, 200 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So okay. Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, anything that's been coming here, right? They've been able to capture any of those frequencies, any of those broadcasts. They know full well all what humanity's about by now, right? They've had 200 years worth of capturing frequencies and absorbing information.
They know who won the Grammys in the 70s, man. That's about it.
So at that point, then landing in gun-free DC would be the best place to be.
Yeah. I don't know. It just reminded me.
Canada.
You don't want to go to Alberta, trust me.
Right?
It just that this conversation just reminded me of a post I actually made in the group a while ago. They've just been surveying everything already. They've been watching us for who knows how long. They're just, for all we know, they're surveying this planet to destroy it for an intergalactic highway, just to bring back the Hitchhiker's Guide reference here. But like, I think they've been surveying or watching or observing the area and us for a long time now. So they're probably already aware of how we act to things, how we're going to react to something, or they have a decent idea of it. So I don't think it would matter if they showed up in a small place or a big city. It's going to create the same kind of chaos.
You're saying they've been watching our movies, so they know that we're going to try to kill them on sight?
Yeah, literally.
I don't know, man. I just, I don't see a whole lot of evidence for things coming here from elsewhere, right? I see a lot of evidence for us doing spooky shit in the skies.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? But I don't see the other.
That like goes into I don't know, Jeremy, you want to talk about the paper mache alien bodies?
I mean,
just like a brief thing,
yeah.
Whatever.
Well, I mean, what were they calling them? What was the term that they were using?
Something with T.
Yeah, try something.
Tridactyl.
Yeah, that's what it was.
So basically, meaning tri-digit, right? Tri-finger. Basically, excuse me. The Peruvian or the
that's it. Yeah.
Nazca. Right, the Nazca lines. There's been mummified remains found with elongated digits and some very strange skeletal structures. Let me see if I can bring them up here. Tridactyl. There's. Let me see here. Should probably let me read off the next bit, and then I'll bring this up, and we'll look through. So I'm not just leaving dead space in the recording. All right.
Yep.
All right. So let's talk about phase 2 really quick. Phase 2. The end of phase 1 ended in 1952, which would have been the display of UFOs over Washington D.C., which lasted a few days, and jets were scrambled from nearby Andrews Air Force Base. Made a huge display of basically dogfights and people from the ground. A ton of people spotted and witnessed these various shapes and sizes of UFOs over our nation's capital in 1952. Now, phase 2 overlapped with phase 1 slightly by about 3 years. This was the contactee phase. People claiming interactions with extraterrestrial pilots, often with messages about nuclear weapons and its dangers. You got to remember, in 1949, this was just a few years removed from the usage of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki at the end of World War II. The cultural impact, now, as we talk about the phases 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, we'll talk about how each one of these phases had a cultural impact. The cultural impact from phase 1 was the introduction of the UFOs to the masses. Now, the cultural impact of phase 2 was the emergence of UFO-related cults and religious movements, particularly in the hippie culture. Now, specifically, there was a lot of different UFO cults that popped up during this time. The one that I want to kind of push out there and use as an example was George Adamski's cult, which George Adamski was made basically famous for his stories of interactions with the Nordic aliens who would take him aboard his spaceship or their spaceships and fly him to the dark side of the moon where he would report lush vegetation, rolling hills, and populated civilizations of human-esque beings, as well as visitations to other astronomical bodies within our solar system. Now, Adamski would go ahead and publish 3 separate books. Flying Saucers Have Landed in 1953, Inside the Spaceships in 1955, and Flying Saucers Farewell in 1961. And if anybody else is familiar with the work that we've done here on Infinite Rabbit Hole, in the mid 1960s, we were all introduced to one of the most famous cases that we've ever covered here on the Infinite Rabbit Hole, Woody Derenberger in Injure Cold. So phase 2 was the phase of the contactee. Now, we will talk about a different version of the contactee in phase 4 a little bit later, but for now, we're talking about the peaceful, well, mostly peaceful contactee, which led into the UFO cult and religious movements.
Real quick, I want to respond to the chat. So Skeeter said Ezekiel's wheel in the Bible is a UFO description that's still being seen today. They just painted what they saw. They never told a story, anything else like that. So I want to read what he's referring to. This is Ezekiel 1, verse 4 through a lot, right? So I'm just going to read it until it's done. It says, as I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness around it, and a fire flashing forth continually. In the midst of the fire, there was a gleaming metal, and from the midst of it came a likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had human likeness, but each had 4 faces, and each of them had 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and the soles of their feet were like the sole of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like burnished bronze. Under their wings, on their 4 sides, they had human hands, and the 4 had their faces and their wings thus. Their wings touched one another. Each one of them went straight forward without turning as they went. As for the likeness of their faces, each had a human face. The 4 had the face of a lion on the right side. The 4 had the face of an ox on the left side, and the 4 had the face of an eagle, such as were their faces. And their wings were spread above. Each creature had 2 wings, each of which touched the wing of another, while 2 covered their bodies. And each went straight forward. Whether the spirit would go away, they went without turning as they went. As for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, the appearance of torches moving to and fro among the living creatures. And the fire was so bright that out of the fire went forth lightning. And the living creatures darted to and fro like the appearance of a flash of lightning. Now, as I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on earth beside the living creatures, one for each of the 4 of them. So that's 4 wheels. As for their appearance of the wheels and their construction, their appearance was like the gleaming of beryl, and the four had the same likeness, their appearance and construction being as it were wheel within a wheel. Then they went of any of their four directions without turning as they went, and their rims were tall and awesome, and the rims of all four were full of eyes all around. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went beside them. And when the living creatures rose from the earth, the wheels rose. Wherever the Spirit wanted to go, they went, and the wheels rose along with them, for the spirit of the living creature was the wheels. Then those went. When those went, these went, and when those stood, these stood, and when those rose from the earth, the wheels. I see, getting no pictures right there. These stood, and when they rose from the earth, the wheels along with them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. Over the heads of the living creature, there was a likeness of an expanse, shining in awe-inspiring crystals spread out above their heads. And under the expanse of their wings were stretched out straight one toward another. And each creature had two wings covering its body, and they went, and I heard the sound of their wings like the sound of many waters, like the sound of the Almighty, a sound of tumult, like the sound of an army. When they stood still, they let down their wings, and there came a voice above the expanse over their heads. When they stood still, they let down their wings. So that was 1 through 25 of Ezekiel 1, I believe. So that's the problem. All right, so that is an incredible description of an angelic being, and that is describing a cherubim. The problem I have, Skeeter, with people seeing these wheeled things is not the full picture. So either it's not what they're saying it is, or it's a demonic reproduction that cannot be filled to fruition, right? The devil likes to deceive. So if he's going to make someone think that they're seeing a cherubim, but he's not going to show the full thing of how glorious this thing is or how terrifying it is, then it's not that, right? So it's a reproduction like you would expect, say, like Marvel wants to make action figures of their heroes, or like the old Christmas movie, was it Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? So there's Turbo Man, and then he goes and he gets the Mexican Turbo Man, and it breaks apart in his hands, and it's a cheap replica and all that sort of stuff. It's not the right thing. So the devil may be trying to replicate the same thing in his angels that have fallen with him, to deceive people, but he's not able to because it's not the real thing. So that's my problem with it, or people are just being deceived into thinking they're saying something that isn't that, because whatever I just read right there is way more glorious and would scare me into crapping my pants. And that's why every angel in the Bible, when they came upon a person, they said, "Fear not," right? Because people were scared to death, right? So that's probably what it is. Sorry about that.
That is a very interesting bit right there. Who brought that up?
You guys see this?
Yeah, I saw this.
I just saw this. This is 2 hours old.
Yeah, this I saw earlier today.
UFOs moving at hundreds of miles an hour underwater.
I have not seen this.
Yeah, this was pretty interesting.
Republican Representative Tim Burchett said in an interview Wednesday that an admiral whom he did not identify had told him of an unidentified craft moving at incredible speeds in the sea. Quote, "They tell me something's moving at hundreds of miles an hour underwater, as large as a football field underwater," the Tennessee congressman told former Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz.
Do you know crazy. That the admiral that was on Sean Ryan's show, Tim Gallaudet?
Yeah,
he was in one of the congressional hearings, who had also been talking about his other admiral buddies who were talking about that kind of stuff. One of those admirals that Tim Gallaudet was talking to is one of the admirals that was talking to that congressman.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's supposedly one of the same unnamed admirals, but apparently he's getting ready to come forward now too.
Bro, the size of a football field.
That's huge.
Yeah,
that's a lot of water to move through. Like, this is what I was saying earlier about, like,
well,
you know,
so
not needing aerodynamics and shit like that, like, or hydrodynamics. Like, these craft are literally, there must be a force field, or they're bending space time.
They would have to have hydrodynamics. Like, even our aircraft carriers that are larger than a football shield. I mean, shoot, they can, or football field rather, they can only go 35 knots tops, right? So they would have to have hydrodynamics to be able to get through that.
Have you guys not been seeing the big picture that's been being painted? It's nuts. Like everything goes back as far as like Bob Lazar. So like when Bob Lazar came out and he said that what was it, element 150 or 155 or
115 or something like that,
yeah, where he said that they use this to as fuel for the UFOs, and not only as fuels but also for gravity manipulation, right? And creating these gravity manipulating fields around these craft to basically displace any matter around it and create a seamless form of transportation because it removes everything around it. Like that's what it's doing, right? And then that's what Dr. Stephen Greer was talking about. And then you see how, you know, he's talking about this stuff, and then he's talking about this CE5 thing, and then you have this whistleblower that comes forward, then he's saying the same thing, and then Luis Elizondo is starting to say the same thing. You're starting to get all these people that are coming forward to talk about the same thing, and yet the original person that said it way back in the day, everyone called crazy. It's nuts.
It's just, but you know, it's just interesting to me because, you know, there's still no evidence that these things come from elsewhere, right? So it's like, to me, this has got to be some organization creating these things. These are man-made.
See, elsewhere could be anywhere though. And the thing is that
could be a lot of shit, but there's just no evidence of that, right? But we have evidence of humans making stuff like this.
This is why I have a problem with the term alien in general, because alien, it just means foreign or strange. Like we find all these new creatures from the ocean or from the dirt or whatever all the time, and they call it an alien-like creature. Well, yeah, because it's a foreign creature to us. That's all an alien really is a foreign creature to us. I have a little bit of a hard time with that term.
To be fair, though,
that's the same with elsewhere. It's like, well, where is elsewhere? To me, elsewhere is Wisconsin, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
Well, to be fair, when you're talking about the ufology community, right? The majority of the time when discussing the term aliens, you're talking about extraterrestrials.
Well, yeah.
And the problem is exactly that, is that they're so far caught up into the extraterrestrial storyline that everything else kind of goes to the wayside. And you know, Jeff, you know, gets tied up in the idea that it has to be some human contractor. It's not, I'm not saying that he's wrong. I'm not saying that it has to be an alien being from extra terror, so from outside of this planet,
inside the Earth. I mean,
and that's
ocean, maybe.
Well, and that's I'm you know, I think that the best way to answer this, right, isn't to sit here and say that it has to be one of these answers. The best way to answer this is to say, hey man, I think that this is a tiered possibility answer, right? Where I think that the best possibility is that it's an interdimensional thing. And then the next possibility is that it's probably from somewhere within the earth or somewhere within the oceans of some civilization that's non-human intelligence.
To kind of piggyback off that, though, this whole, sure, maybe they come from this inner earth, right? But to us, a random person who doesn't look like, they may look human-like, but for all we know, they're a lot paler and they look more gray in the skin because of it. That we would see this person and go, whoa, that's an alien, because they look like us, but they aren't us. You know what I mean?
I personally think that there's zero chance that they're from another planet.
So then what do you think about these quote unquote paper mache, aliens, right? They found in Mexico that have the human-like structure. Do you buy that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think so.
Because that's exactly what I'm saying. Like those creatures could have been inner Earth creatures.
Yeah,
and we're calling them aliens.
Especially when you talk about Central and South America, especially when you have like what was it, Colonel Fawcett and the Lost City of Z, and you have all of those the Aztec cave systems and the stories of Quetzalcoatl and how the civilizations that arose from the grounds. I mean, the area is just littered with lore and history of advanced beings that came up through the ground systems, and how all of these pyramids and everything that popped up across the world were actually openings to these massive cave systems that were found under the ground, but were entrances to the above world for these people. And that's how you have a lot of the architecture that is shared from various parts of the world, is because all the architecture was shared by a civilization that was found under the ground. And then you have architecture that's shared in Africa, in South America, and East Asia or West Asia or East Asia.
Right.
And there's even some that say that there's architecture just exactly like it in Antarctica. And I think we've talked about that a few times. We haven't done a deep dive on it yet, but I mean, there's an argument to be said about that too.
There was something that was discovered recently. I want to say it was in Antarctica. It was a massive underground man-made structure.
Yeah.
I'll get you the link. I saw it come up on my feed and I saved it, but I don't know if I sent it to the group.
I'm way more inclined.
It was discovered through what do they do when they're looking at cave mounds and stuff like that, or not cave mounds, but Indian burial mounds and stuff, and they're looking at the ground, they're like geoscanning or something like that. It was found something like that, where they found a massive structure that was man-made in Antarctica.
Sure. I'm way more inclined to believe that there was like Middle Earth was a thing, for instance, right? Like if you went back in history, because I think most of history is just fabricated. So I think if you go back in time, however long it is, there was probably like advanced civilizations all over the place on the surface, right? First of all, and they were probably doing crazy shit that we wouldn't even believe. Okay. And then I also do think that there's probably civilizations that we were warring with that do come from underground. And it's possible that a lot of those mud flood theories, like when they reset history last time, that those mud floods were designed to bury all of these entrances. Because you got to remember, right, like what Jeremy's talking about too, like the pyramids, Giza was buried under sand a couple hundred years ago, right? Like the dudes that were traveling across the Sahara, they just saw the very tops of the pyramids, and the Sphinx was probably completely buried for a long time, right? And then after like years and hundreds of years, the head started being, exposed due to wind and stuff like this, and then explorers came and they started digging it all out. Like that whole plateau was under sand, and then you get into mud flood shit, and people are digging under these older structures, and they're realizing, wait a minute, these 2-3 story structures that are here, we can dig down, and these structures are actually like 4 or 5 stories deeper, right? And some of the doorways and windows are much bigger, as if it was giants or something that were occupying some of these buildings. So I think there is something to them being from here, and maybe at some point we just wiped them out or blocked them off from accessing the surface. But
what part of history you think was covered up or changed?
A lot of it. Most of
Like
it.
what specifically?
I mean, it just first, if I had to say specifically, I'd say just the timeline in general, right? So,
How so?
well, how do you know that it's year 2025?
Well, I don't.
Okay, it's that easy.
But besides that, say like going into ancient civilizations and stuff like that. Say like we both believe in the flood, right? Right. It was
Yeah.
cataclysmic event, maybe one of many, right? But it
Sure.
was one of them. And it could have potentially destroyed all of the world's records if they were written down on paper versus stone. And even if they were written down on stone and they could have washed into the ocean and been buried under silt and all that sort of stuff, right? So what's to say it wasn't strategically covered up versus naturally covered up or catastrophically covered up, right? To hide the information from these peoples that were so bad that God had to flood the earth.
I think it was both. It was both because like Göbekli Tepe was purposely buried. They've done the studies to find that they could tell that it was buried on purpose before the Younger Dryas, right? So like they knew that something was going to happen, and then the Younger Dryas events happen, and for the next 1,000 years, like natural disasters buried the rest of the shit, right?
Okay,
Göbekli Tepe is just one example of these massive sites that was purposely buried, and who knows how many there are. That's just one of the few that we've stumbled across.
I mean, honestly, there could be Atlantis because we know that just like today, the major metropolitan areas, for the most part, not always, but for the most part, are on the coastlines, right? Because that's where the trade happens and the commerce happens and going in between countries and all that sort of stuff. Well, if we know that the seas rose like 200 feet or something like that, right? Or came 200 feet, 400 feet inland, right? So that could have buried a lot of civilizations, right? We're talking about 200 feet inland is probably, or 400 feet inland rather, is probably 40 feet up
of sea rise. It was 400 feet of sea level rise.
Feet.
Yeah, by the end of the Ice Age.
Okay, so
the Younger Dryas period, the sea level rose 400 feet.
So we're seeing a lot of mud-built civilizations collapsing. We're seeing a lot of stone-built civilizations turning into reefs, right? Before modern science could get a chance to get at them, right? They just look like reefs now, right? Because they're all overbuilt and covered with stuff and everything. So I don't think that a tremendous amount was covered up intentionally. I don't think that historians throughout the world have tried to cover stuff up from us. Instead, I think they're trying to uncover stuff that has been buried, whether by natural means or by supernatural means.
I'll tell you a couple of examples, man. First of all, just a modern example. Okay, they've been trying to rewrite history just for the last 10 years in front of our eyes. You and I know this. We've seen it happen, right? They've been doing it right in front of us. Okay, I'm not going to get into it. It's not the show for that. However, you can go back and we could talk about I've heard arguments, and I don't know enough. I haven't done the research to know, like, people will say, oh, Napoleon wasn't real, right? Or like these types of things. I'm not saying that part of history is necessarily fake or not. I don't know. But when you get into like ancient shit, especially when you talk about like carbon dating not being that effective, when you talk about like the chokehold that archaeology has on all the information about like ancient dig sites and things like that, that's if I want to say when, I don't know,
obviously,
however far back those dig sites are completely strangled, right, by like the Smithsonian and their fucking peoples. Okay, so that's what I mean about history in the timeline being skewed. So
I will agree with you there. I know I'm gonna disagree with Jeremy, but the idea of the Smithsonian and the archaeologists and all these people trying to push this billions of year, evolution over time type stuff. So they're willing to scrub the numbers and all that sort of stuff. Example. I agree with that, right?
Yeah. here's a good example. I forgot I was going to mention as well. It's just that like the King's List. I think it's like it's either Sumerian King List or the Egyptian King's List.
Egyptian, yeah.
Right, the Egyptian's King's List. Like, so mainstream archaeology, they recognize the King's List back to a certain date, right? Like back to 3600 BC or whatever the year is. Okay.
Sure.
And then the King's List that the Egyptians wrote down goes back like 42,000 years, some ridiculous number. Okay. But archaeology, okay, as a whole just says, no. That's just bullshit. They were just making shit up. This is the real start of the thing. And it's like, okay, fuck you. How do you know, first of all, right? You're the arbiter of truth and you're dictating to us what the history of humanity is, right? So to me, that's where the timeline could be skewed.
But they could have been making it up in the same way that the Greeks made up their gods, in the same way that the Norwegians made up their gods, right? Thor wasn't up there slinging the sun across the sky and banishing the moon every night, right? They could have been making it all up.
This isn't a list of gods, though. This is a king's list. This is the list of rulers who ruled over.
But they could have been making it up.
They could have. Now, the only thing that I think is odd is that if I'm not mistaken, some of the reigns, the lengths of some of the reigns were like thousands of years, right? Like the further that it went back on the king's list, the kings were reigning for hundreds of years, thousands of years. And then that's why archaeology is like, oh no, it's bullshit, because obviously people don't live 5,000 years. How could he have a reign?
Then you have Methuselah in the Bible living 969 years. Yeah.
Okay, so that's where I think shit gets a little wonky.
Anyways,
it does not say that God created Adam and Eve and they were the first people.
Got them.
It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that.
Jeff
so
Hernandez strikes again.
Trails
are real.
I will agree with you that it doesn't say that they were the only two people. They might have been the first people. They were not the only two people, right? It doesn't say that. So like when Cain killed Abel, he went out to another land and married a wife. Well, where did she come from? So they weren't the only two people there. They were the only two people in the Garden of Eden. So it could have been possible, and it's not described in the Bible how long Adam and Eve lived before they sinned, right? They could have lived for 100,000 or 1,000,000 years before they sinned, right? It could have been 1,000,000,000 years before they sinned. But at some point they sinned and they got cast out of the Garden of Eden. And then childbirth pain was a thing, and then Cain killed Abel because he was jealous, and then Cain was banished, and then Cain married a wife somewhere else. Well, where did that somewhere else come from, and who was that person? So they could have been there. So yes, Egypt could have been around for 42,000 years or 40,000 years or 100,000 years up until that point. The only problem is I tend to side with archaeology because you have to kind of prove it. But at the same time, I recognize what you're coming from, where modern archaeology and even the Smithsonian is just full of crap. They want to hide the fact that there was giants in the Indian mounds. They want to hide all this sort of stuff, right? Because, I don't know, maybe it would prove the Bible's right, or it would prove some other narrative other than what they're pushing. I agree, but I also disagree.
That's why I go back to my first point when I said that they've been doing it in front of us for the last 10 years, right? So imagine what they've been doing for the last 10 years, just changing narratives, changing history, just doing all that kind of shit. But imagine they didn't have the internet for all of human history. And this goes back for thousands of years that these schmucks have been doing this to us, right? So like, how many things and how many times did they fucking put this guy's name in there, change the date to that? Oh no, he won the battle. That type of shit, I think, is just, I think if we had a time machine and you can go back and look at all the events in history, you'd probably be like, what the fuck? Like, he's not the guy that they said he was. He didn't do that, right? Like,
all right, here we go.
Well, throughout history, it's been proven that nobody is who they say they are. So,
all right. Two things. One, I want to give a shout out to Big Chalk 0870.
Welcome, bro.
He said, shout out from the middle of Australia. I try my best to watch live, but the time difference kills me. Anyways, keep up the good work. Hey, thanks for stopping by. I really do appreciate you there.
Thank you.
Where did Jeff go? Where did he go?
He was losing the argument.
He just up and left us. How rude.
What the fuck, dude?
Ain't that right, Crystal? He's losing the argument, so he left.
Jeffrey Marie.
She's gonna be like, no.
I worked up an appetite. I needed a snack and a drink.
Oh, dude, are those popcorners?
Yeah, bro.
Those things are
Bro,
so
I
good.
fucking love popcorners. Ooh, I've never seen that flavor. What's that?
They
What
could
flavor?
be a sponsor if they send me a pallet, but we'll see.
All right. So what I wanted to say was
Sweet chili.
Sweet chili. I didn't even know there was a sweet chili.
Oh,
But
they're so
the
good.
the white cheddar ones though.
Oh, man.
And the kettle cooked ones are just
The kettle cooked ones are the
Dangerous.
biggest boobs.
those are
I don't know if
fucking
you
Popcorn.
knew
Send
that
it to-
boogies
send it
had
to pallet.
boobs, but they do, and it's the kettle cooked ones.
So I have been sick for about a week now. And I mean, I'm not just like, got a cough, but like can't get out of bed, dead to the world. I'm probably going to be going to the hospital tomorrow, sick, right? There was about 3 days where I was in a waking coma where I couldn't move. I couldn't read anything. I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't get up, do anything. And I literally was just sitting there in my thoughts. And I was bored out of my mind. And I was fighting a massive migraine for 3 days straight. And one of the things that I thought about was what you guys were just talking about history, right? And I was thinking to myself, because like literally 2 days prior to that, my wife and I were having this conversation about history. And she had started talking about some historical things. And, I told her, I said, be careful. You have to remember something, right? And, I hate saying things like this because it always sounds like, I'm mentoring, but remember that history is always written by the victor. And I said, I know it sounds stupid. It is.
Nope.
What do you mean?
The Bible is filled with a lot of Hebrew history, and they were not written down by victors. They were written down by people that were enslaved by many nations. So not true.
Okay.
Generally speaking, yes.
I'm going to be honest with you, Jake. I've never learned Bible history. So I don't know that history, nor was I ever taught that in any sort of educational format.
You could learn it on the internet.
I'm sure I could.
Because the writings of the Hebrews who were being conquered by the other nations, like the Canaanites and things like that.
Let me ask you, why is it that I'm not taught that? Is it because history is written by the victor?
Or
I mean, so anyways, back to what else.
Have you read the history of the Babylonians conquering Israel?
Absolutely not.
Well, I think the point is
because Israel wrote down their history being conquered by the Babylonians. So you should read that. So yes, in major countries, yes, you're right. Like Rome conquering people, yes.
Well, I'm not
plenty of
gonna,
scholars, right? Stuff like that.
But that in America, man. I'm not going to talk to you about Middle Eastern history. I wasn't taught that.
But that's the problem. Is that for the most part?
Why is that the problem? Why is that the problem? I'm not from there, so I don't know it. I never got taught it. Why would it be the problem? Why would that be the point that I'm trying to make right now?
Don't argue it. Don't get frustrated with me. I'm just telling you that for the most part, a lot of conquered nations, not strictly biblical, also wrote down their being conquering a lot more than the people who took the time to conquer them, who were invading them and also warring with them. They had things to do. They weren't writing down, hey, we're going to go conquer these sorts of people. The other people were saying, hey, we're being conquered right now. Holy crap, we're getting slaughtered. This is how many men we've lost. Like it's just a thing. So that saying is baloney.
All right. Never mind then. Well, I'm just going to move on to the next phase of this UFO history. All right. Phase 3. nuclear military bases interacting with UAPs, 1960s to 1970s. The focus of this is the UAPs interfering with operations at nuclear ICBM bases in the US and USSR. There is a string of northern Air Force bases called the Northern Tier bases. Most famously, this would be the Malmstrom Air Force Base sabotage that highlighted the incident where a UFO shut off nuclear reactors that were being worked on or brought up on by various nuclear workers there at the base. I'm not 100% sure as to what the story was, but it is well documented that whatever was there at the time was orange, and it had affected whatever that they were doing with their nuclear weapons during that night. The effect from this was a ton of UFO related projects, mainly Grudge, Bluebeam, and what was the other one, Jeff? Do you remember what the first one was called? Grudge, Bluebeam, and
OSAP?
No, OSAP and ATIP are modern. Those are the ones that Elizondo worked for.
So many fucking projects, man. I don't even know, dude. When you say it, I'll be like, oh yeah. Operation Frank.
Anyways, let's see. Grudge. Project Sign, Project Grudge, and Project Blue Book were mostly started in response to the attacks or the manipulation of nuclear silos in the northern tiered Air Force bases of the Phase 3.
Speaking of projects, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I don't know. You've been keeping up with current events at all in your sickness? This whole Project Stargate?
Have I been staying up at Project Stargate?
Yeah, do you know what Project Stargate is?
I heard about Project Stargate. I don't, off the top of my head, know exactly what it is now.
So this is a new project. This is a brand new project. Project Stargate is like a new AI thing, right? So they're building all these massive data centers in the US and these giant fucking mega AI plants and nuclear power plants to power them and all this stuff, right? And they're calling it Project Stargate. And I just think it's interesting that they're calling it Project Stargate. It's almost as if they're using that to flood the internet with this new project that's publicly known to cover up the old Project Stargate that not a lot of people know about. Because if you Google Project Stargate right now, of course you're going to get the AI shit, Trump, you know, the data center, blah, 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 blah. You're not going to find the original Project Stargate that they were doing like spooky fucking ESP shit and all kinds of, you know, crazy CIA shit.
I wonder if it's because of this whole CE5 thing. Because CE5 and the original Project Stargate has a lot of similarities.
Maybe, man, but you know, it also made me think too. Is it possible? Because you know, you hear people like Elon Musk and these fucking tech people. They talk about like our new AI gods are coming, right? And it's like, you know, there's something to that. I think where they really believe this shit. I think these cults believe this shit, and they think that building these super intelligent AI systems are going to somehow like bridge us to whatever. Right, call it another dimension or call it the spirit world or the demonic realm, or whatever you want to call it. Like, I think they're building these data centers for that, and they're flooding the internet with the information so that we don't start. Not just so that we don't. I think that's just like a cherry on top. Flood the internet with the word Stargate so they can't find the old Stargate. But also, it's like a little wink and a nod, like, hey, we're going to call this Stargate. And this is how we're going to communicate with the stars. Like, literally, we're going to use AI to communicate with our fucking gods.
It's interesting.
Some
I wonder why they
shit.
would recycle.
That's the question too, right?
Yeah, I know that's what you were asking. I don't know why I reiterated it, but it is interesting. Because yeah, you're right. Because I just Googled it, and that's all I'm getting right now is this American artificial intelligence joint venture created by OpenAI, SoftBank, Oracle, and investment firm MGK. The venture plans on investing up to $500 billion US in AI infrastructure by 2029.
It's interesting, man. Sorry, I didn't mean to like derail the UFO conversation, but we were talking about projects and it made me think of that. And I think that it's super interesting because, again, I think that these people are in a cult. They're in what I would call the Saturn death cult, and they've been talking about a golden age. They've been talking about bringing about a golden age. Check this out, right?
Do you think that this AI is their god, their entity?
Yes. Listen, I think this, man, because if you look at CERN, right, we all know CERN's been up to spooky shit this whole time. They got a statue of Shiva in the front, okay, goddess of fucking destruction and rebirth, okay. And then they've been talking about this golden age that they've been trying to bring back for literally thousands of years, okay. And the tech people who have all been involved in transhumanism and eugenics going back to like World War II, okay, they're the same people who dumped all the funding and are involved in all the programs, right? The WEFs and the fucking trilateral commissions and all these organizations that are literally backing all of this AI shit. Okay. I literally think they're trying to build what they're calling their gods, their AI gods, or they're bridging a portal to communicate with these things. And then and they're calling it the golden age. And this is another thing you can look up too. Type in Google this, Google the golden age. Just Google that and you'll see the connection from what you just Googled before. This is a fun game. What do you see? You see Trump? No. You see Trump's quotes, the golden age?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the whole thing. If you listen to his speech, he went to the fucking World Economic Forum to Davos. He went to Davos the other day, and he was saying it, and the way that he says things, right? It's all coded. I'm a little bit QE, all right? I'm a little QAnonish. He says things that are coded, and he says this is America's golden age. And the way he says is he enunciates the golden age part. He's very clear about repeating the golden age.
I have an article right here, and the first sentence is President Donald Trump, with his usual bombast, has declared that his second term will be a new golden age for the country.
Bye-bye.
I mean, he said it in his freaking speech. He said this is the beginning of the golden age of America. He said
in the same speech. He said he was going to that we were going to be the capital of fucking AI and crypto, right?
Yeah.
And those things are all connected to this, one world, new world, order shit. Listen, if you want to talk like layers on conspiracies, right? Like base layer reality, yeah, I voted for Orange Man because the lesser of two evils. On deeper levels of conspiracy, he's probably the Antichrist. We're probably about to have 7 years of fucking balling, dude. We're going to be awesome for 7 years, and it's going to be super dope. This is what Creamer always talks about. It's just going to be sweet. Golden age. Then it hits the fan. Jake will back me up on that, right?
Yep.
See?
All right, moving on. Just get this done. Phase 4, alien abductions. Huh?
No, go ahead.
Phase 4, alien abductions. CE3 phenomenon, which is close encounters of the third kind, which was introduced by J. Allen Hynek, includes visual sightings of extraterrestrial beings. Famous cases, if you're familiar with what we've covered here on Infinite Rabbit Hole, you'll remember Communion, the Whitley Strieber story. And there's been a ton of psychological studies born from this phase, which increases the focus on psychological effects on abductees. Now, with that being said, there has also been a lot of information that has stemmed off of the abductee phase, most of which kind of surrounds the idea of these abductions, highlighting areas of the abductee that have to do with reproduction. So there was a famous abductee story told by Bud Hopkins of an abductee that he called Kathy, who was abducted, had an egg taken, had their egg inseminated external to her body, incubated, birthed, raised, and she was reintroduced to her child, who was a human alien hybrid, during a completely separate abduction case years later. This phase 4, or CE3, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, is by far the darkest of the 6 phases. And this is where you get a lot of the Hollywood stories, a lot of the Hollywood horror stories, sci-fi stories that you see, such as Close Encounters of, or I'm sorry, it's not even Close Encounters, but the Fourth Kind movie. You also get an extension to the J. Allen Hynek table or scale, with CE4 and CE5. CE4, which was not added by J. Allen Hynek, but rather by Jacques Vallée, who added or separated CE3 into 2 separate categories, where CE3 was merely seeing an alien or an extraterrestrial person or being, and CE4 was being taken away from your current location or wherever you were when you saw the being. CE5 has 2 separate definitions. One that was given by Stephen Greer, which is what we have just talked about a little earlier, being where he believed would be humans reaching out to extraterrestrials, where Jacques Vallée believed that CE5 was when there was some sort of physical evidence left on a human body. This here, like I said, the lasting impression left by phase 4 was psychological evaluations of abductee victims. Any comments on that? Nothing. Okay. Phase 5. Mysterious large black triangular craft lasted from the 1990s to the 2010s. Characteristics of these craft were large, silent, low flying with lights at corners. Noticeably, there was also one larger white light in the beginning. Notable event, the Belgium UFO wave, lasted from 1989 to 1990. This was a big speculation, and this also the big outcome from phase 5 was the public's perception of the government being behind a lot of UFO activity. This was the introduction of there was a ton of books that were pushed, a ton of documentaries that were pushed. The TR3B was introduced to a lot of the ufology groups and conspiracy groups, and a lot of people started pointing fingers at the U.S. government or various countries' governments and militaries.
See, this is the thing, man. This is what I'm talking about because I've seen that's just the easiest patent to like remember, right?
Yeah.
TR3B. It's just super easy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a triangular spacecraft. Boom. Everybody knows it. But there's a lot of different patents, man. I've gone down the list before, right? And I've seen dozens and dozens of patents for like anti-gravitic spacecraft, anti-gravitic this, gravity manipulation field generators, like literally all the shit that you've heard in fucking Star Trek. Like there's patents for these things. Now that doesn't mean that all of these things exist, right? I can go get something patent pretty much fucking right now if I have the money to do it. But that's the key, is it costs money to get things patent, number one. And number two, if you look at the patent holders on a lot of these things, not all of them, but a lot of them, they're like big holders, right? It's big money. You have like Raytheon, and you have Northrop Grumman, and you have like St. Clair is a big name. That's one of the Illuminati families. And John St. Clair, he buys up a lot of these fucking patents and stuff. Now he's got infinitely deep pockets, right? So if you have these patents for these things and you have infinitely deep pockets, why wouldn't you have a bunker somewhere where somebody's trying to build these things? You know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the other models that come out from this was the F-117 Nighthawk, which actually was classified top secret until this phase. This phase actually helped push this craft into declassification. So,
and I think it's interesting too because there's another layer on that, because it's one thing to go get a patent for this type of technology. Those are public patents. Everybody knows that. But if you're really going to build some super secret shit, you're not even going to get a patent for it. So going back to like the older stuff, right? Yeah, sure. We don't have a patent from the 50s about anti-gravitic craft. But if we have the patent in the 70s for the anti-gravitic craft, I would assume that somebody else had already worked on and built anti-gravitic craft in the 40s and 50s. And now somebody else is trying to build this technology and they went to get the patent.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Sorry, I'm all drugged up. I guess
that's all good.
Now, so much meds going on right
now. What's interesting again too is like I want to go back to that article that I brought up where the admiral said that there was a football field sized craft moving hundreds of miles an hour under the ocean, right under the water, right? I don't know what it looked like. I didn't read the whole article, but I'm assuming that it was probably either like spherical or rectangular shaped of some kind. I just assume that, right? And going back to what I said at the beginning, like I'll be super spooked when something like amorphous blob or like an organic craft shows up of some kind, because then I'm like, wait a minute, like we wouldn't build that, right? Like we would build spherical craft, triangular craft, cubical craft, these types of craft I feel like humans would build because it's geometrically sound and that's just what we do. But like something from another planet or whatever, like they're going to build some starfish craft or some fucking weird, you know what I mean, jellyfish craft.
It'd be weird. It's what was it? There was a movie that came out years ago where these large black oval shaped craft landed, and these alien beings were stuck behind glass, and they were communicating by like ink spray. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
And I thought that was always a really interesting movie, because it had a whole new concept of communication to it, and I think that's more or less. I know you're talking
Are
about
you
transportation.
talking about Arrival?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
I don't think I've ever seen that movie, but I was intrigued, so I googled it. It's called Arrival, and it came out in 2016.
Yeah, that was a pretty good movie. Now, it didn't have a different form of transportation like you're talking about, but it did have a completely new form of communication, where they talked in sort of like how a squid would eject ink. They did something similar, and they talked in like these circular patterns where I don't know, their sentence would be a circle, and then like the little patterns around the circle would be their sentence. It was a very interesting form of communication, but if you applied that to things such as transportation vehicles, it'd be interesting to see, like, let's say a vehicle made out of liquid, right? Or plasma.
Those are the ones that I'm interested in. Like and I've only seen maybe one or heard of one or two of these sightings in modern times where, and I think one of them was one of these pilots, and he said that it looked more like a cube with a sphere inside, or a sphere with a cube inside, I think is what he said. It was like a cube with a sphere inside of it.
Well, you've seen the jellyfish UFO, right? What did you think about that?
Probably fake, probably CGI. Or a prop of some kind.
It looked like an Imperial droid, I thought we determined.
Yeah, it's an Imperial droid. No, I don't know. I'd have to look
at
it again, to be honest with you. Maybe it was good enough. But you get what I'm saying, though? Like, my whole thing is, if it looks like something that a human would make, it's probably something a human would make. And I don't think I've seen hardly anything, one or two stories ever, that are like, whoa, that's like some.
But why couldn't a being that thought like a human make the same thing that a human would make?
Why? What makes you think that they would think like a human?
Why not?
Why would they?
Well, I mean, depending on the creatures in their planets or something like that.
Well, this is like if you want to get into like debate theory type shit, right? Like, you make the claim that they would think like humans.
Well, I'm not. There's no evidence. I can't cite any evidence that they would think like the way that we do. Obviously, I can't. What's it called? When you say something and someone says something opposite, will they have the what's the term, Jeff? You know it.
What are you getting at? Sorry.
If you were to make a claim, say like the ocean is so many feet deep, right? And someone said, no, you're wrong. They would have the argument of what's the term?
I don't fucking know, bro.
Well, they have to claim their thought, right? So they can't just make that claim and you're like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to defend it, right? So they have to argument that and prove to you why they think that's wrong. Yeah. Right. So I don't have that when it comes to aliens, right? Making spaceships or aquatic ships that look like jellyfish, right?
Yeah, well, that's the point. There's no reason that we would assume that these beings from another planet would make anything that would resemble something that we would be making. Right?
Why wouldn't something from an inner Earth perspective make something from an outer Earth perspective, like a jellyfish?
That's possible. That could be possible, right? Like, I'm not discounting that there could be things from inside the planet, right? Like, I'm just standing on my beliefs that space is fake and gay. So, like, things coming from outer space, like, I'm just trying to make the argument here, like, there's nothing coming from space.
I like how you just casually threw that one in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like his
Well-
go-to when he's backed up against a wall. It's like
I'm not backed up against anything. I'm making a very clear argument here.
Space
There's
is
no
fake
reason to assume
and
that aliens would be
gay.
making a fucking triangle craft, a saucer craft, any of these things. Now, there's only a handful of things that are like out of the ordinary, things that are just like mind-boggling. Like what? The Wheel of Ezekiel is one of them, right? Like what? You know, what I was telling you about this pilot that saw like the cube with the sphere inside, which could be a similar thing to this Wheel of Ezekiel type thing, right? It's like those are weird things that we're probably not building. Maybe we are, but it makes more sense to me that we're building craft that are aerodynamic and hydrodynamic, that can fly and like do these types of things. But we're not building these other types of structures. Like you can't even, there's no words for these structures.
I'm
What do
with
you
Jeff to a
call-
point because there's nothing we can prove here in this chat room that space is real. Yeah, we look up at it every night and we see all the luminaries, we see the moon and all that sort of stuff and all of his phases, but we can't really prove, because none of us are astronauts, right, that the moon is real and things like that. So I understand where Jeff is coming from. I still think he's full of shit, right? But I understand where he's coming from. But at the same time, like, what's to say that these things are actually coming from outer space versus our own planet? And in which case, that could be so many things. That could be our own government. They could be a foreign government. They could be the inner Earth. They could be a not from the inner Earth, from a landmass we don't even know about, right? Because I don't know, because I'm not an oceanic explorer. I'm not a astrophysicist. I'm not a geographer. I'm not any of these sorts of things. So yeah, according to Jeff, what he's claiming, I mean, I guess could be real, because literally I have no way of saying no to them except through the internet. And sometimes we can't always see that what the internet says is true in relation to like the MLK files.
Yep.
It could be baloney, it could be real. No one can honestly know unless you're there with them. Like, someone could say that I'm a murderer. Okay, cool. They could say I murdered someone today. All right, cool. And they could have a whole thing written up about it. But unless someone was there with me today, all throughout the day while I was watching movies with my wife, they would have no idea whether I was a murderer or I wasn't. And it could be very convincing, depending on what I was doing. Say I was making a hydrogen engine for a Toyota Tundra, and some government agency wanted to cover that up, and they were super sincere about it, and they put a letterhead on all the sort of stuff. Some people would say that's true, that I went out to Walgreens and killed someone today. My wife would know that I was there with her watching movies all day, and we went to Walgreens to get her some tampons, and that was it. You know, I mean, but you add those sorts of things into there, and unless you're there with them, or you're able to study the same things and verify that it's true or false, you really don't know. I think that's the scary thing about where we're at today. It's frustrating because we don't know the truth, because we see an official letterhead. Jeremy, you know me, right? We see an official military letterhead, and we think that's the real thing, but it could be bullshit. It could all be bullshit.
Yep.
But we see that as prior military, and we're like, yeah, that looks official to me. Could be plagiarized, right? Other people see that aren't prior military, and they're like, holy shit, this is military letterhead. It's got to be real. Could be bullshit the whole time. They could do that to all of us. They could do that for the JFK files. They could do that for the Martin Luther King files. They could do that for the moon landing. They can do that for everything. It's so frustrating for us as people that want to report on this stuff, to report the truth, and not be looked at as, shills. I want to believe my government, but dang it, it's getting real hard to.
I agree. 100%, actually. Yep.
And with
It's
AI
rough.
and everything, it's making it even harder now too.
Oh my gosh, it's so rough. Like we were expecting, Trump to come in and he was going to release all these files and he signed an executive order for it. But what's to say that all these files aren't also tainted with bullshit files, right?
And the
Where
fact
they
that
were
we
trying
have
to
to wait
smear
now.
the guy.
Who's to say they're not dropping all this information just to stir the pot and cause chaos and outrage, right? Instead of actually giving us the truth, they're just making something up just to cause an outrage. Because
there is that.
Who knows? It's a distraction.
There is that as well. But also, we know that the U.S. government for a long time has been just full of crap, right? They've been just stirring the pot and stirring the pot and stirring the pot. And they make these things, say like the Philadelphia experiment, right? Things that weren't crazy, but make them top secret. So what's to say that all the files we're getting at the moment aren't just bullshit files they made of just nonsense, where they were just trying to frame the guys, be like, well, it's the easiest thing to declassify rather. So we're going to release these first. And these were the smear campaigns. These were, on Martin Luther King Jr. It was on, JFK or whatever it was, right? It was just smear campaigns.
This goes back to the Victor's writing the history books thing, man, is because it's happening right in front of us all the time, right? Like, now I'm not going to say that everything that the United States puts out will forever be seen as truth, because that's not going to be the case. But currently, right now, the United States is power, and power is projecting truth to the world. So when power puts out, hey man, this is what happened, the world accepts it as truth, and it gets embedded in history. Now it might be 100 years, 500 years, however long it is in the future, till somebody comes about and says, hey man, like that was actually false. But not all of the shit gets caught, right? Like very few things get caught that get misconstrued through history. So the timelines, the history, it's all fucking bullshit. And I think that the age of knowing that we're going to, this age of Aquarius, this age of knowing, this age of information, this golden age, this AI information age, is all just, it's exactly what you're saying, bro. They're all putting out bullshit to get us all to accept the things as truth, right? Trump's going to do these. Again, I voted for the guy, but he's going to come out and he's going to do all out of this shit where it's like, hey man, I'm releasing the documents. I'm telling you the truth now, what actually happened on January 6th, what actually happened here and there, right? But at the same time, like, that's going to soften up a lot of the people who are self-thinkers and critical thinkers. They're going to be like, oh, look, we're getting the truth finally. We're getting the truth finally. We're getting the truth finally. But you're not, right? You just suck in a whole nother class of the people who were critically thinking and thinking for themselves. It's a big psyop. It's a distraction, like Kid said.
Yeah.
As interested as I am in these files and these documents, yeah, they can't be like, they have to be the distraction. There's got to be something more going on.
Everything's a distraction.
I just don't understand why there has to be the 60-day wait. Like that right there just screams red flag.
Yeah.
The review, right. They're gonna be
drop the documents.
So much crap.
Like, what's the point of any redactions if there's an executive order that says release this shit? I mean, there shouldn't be any reason that as soon as pen hits paper for that order, you should be walking over there and opening up the file cabinet and pulling that shit out and dropping it on the counter.
If the public knew what the truth was, not just about MLK, but about JFK and RFK and all these events that have happened in history, right? Them creating history, okay? Like the Gulf of Tonkin and all this type of shit, because that's in those files too, right? And now that's not even a secret anymore. It's public information that the Gulf of Tonkin incident, the reason that we went to Vietnam, right, was not as they told us when we went. Okay, they bullshit us, just like they bullshit us about weapons of mass destruction, right? Just like they bullshit us about all these things, okay? if the information on the files comes out 100% unredacted, the entire world would fucking lose their minds, because they'd be like, wait, are you telling me that the last 60 to 70 years has just been a complete sham? Everything.
Yeah.
And it would be a collapse, bro. It wouldn't just be American population being pissed off. It'd be the whole world would be pissed, because we've gone into every country, right? Vietnam, for instance, just to stick on that, was not a military action, it was a police action, right? Like we went in there as fucking police force and did this shit off of a lie, right? So imagine what the international community does when that comes out as truth, because the files get released unredacted. This is why there's a fucking waiting period and they have to redact shit. It's not just because like, oh, Frank ordered the hit. No. It's like the implications that go way deeper than that. Like the world, net gets fucking tangled and shit,
All right. I got to wrap this up, guys. I am so tired right now.
Yeah, it's almost 11 o'clock. What the fuck?
Yeah, Jeff.
It's Jeff's bedtime, clearly.
All right. Last
it's
one.
way past that.
Phase 6. Pilots interacting and recording UAP government acknowledgement. 2010 to today. Modern sightings, increased pilot reports, both civilian and military. Leaked footage. This is when we got the gimbal, Tic Tac, and Go Fast videos confirmed in 2021. And from this, we got official recognition from Congress and the formation of new government task force. And that's it. That is the 6 phases of modern UFO history. No, we took
one big fucking psyop.
All wrapped up in one big fucking psyop.
No, I don't think so. I think there's a lot of things wrapped up in a psyop, but there's some things that aren't. I can't tell you what those things are, right? I couldn't say, well, this is a psyop and this isn't a psyop and blah, 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 blah. I can't say that, but I think there's some things that the government does know, and there's things that the government doesn't know, because the government isn't all-knowing. They can try to be, but they aren't.
Just like they didn't know what the drones were.
What's that?
Yeah, I'm waiting on that shit too. That's pissed me off.
No, not the drones. I'm talking about like everyday type stuff. Like you just said it. Someone put $50 into the meme coins and made $3.2 million. So if the guy wanted to make a drone that could drop a nuclear warhead on Washington, as long as he used a VPN, who's to say who knows about what, right? It's awful. It's awful to think about. I would encourage anyone not to, but who's to say what anyone knows about what? So yes, the government knows about a lot of stuff, and no, the government doesn't know about all the stuff.
The government doesn't know shit, bro. Nobody said it was the government.
If they knew about all the stuff, they would be able to prevent every single freaking assassination attempt, or they do, and they're just waiting around like oh, maybe it happens. Who knows? Hey, we'll cheer some beers later.
It's not the government.
The government's so corrupt, dude. I don't know. Maybe they know about everything, and they're just waiting around. They're just like, maybe it happens. Who?
The government can't build a road, bro. It's not the government.
Not local. Local government.
All right, kid.
Jeremy,
thanks for showing up.
I'm glad I could make it. I'm glad you guys invited me. This was a good episode. I had fun.
It was Jake's idea, man. Thank Jake. You had a good idea, Jake.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jake.
Well, I mean, Jeremy wasn't going to be here today.
Yeah, I almost couldn't.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was told you weren't going to be here. I was like, okay, well, I will step in. And then you were here. I was like, oh, bonus. I get to hang out with all the guys tonight.
Yeah, well, just in case they ended up ripping my throat out and I can't record for another month, I figured I'd try to be here today.
Makes sense.
So, but, well, you guys got any final thoughts?
Nope.
Thanks for having me. This was fun. We'll have to do it again soon.
Wow.
That's all I got.
All right. Well,
No.
Jake, nope. Well, that has been another episode of the Infinite Rabbit Hole podcast. Until next time, travelers, we'll see you right here in the next fork of the path of the Infinite Rabbit Hole. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Crystal in the back.
Bye.